Welcome to Outside the Box for Week 11. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Scott Barrett. You can find Scott on Twitter at ScottBarrettDFB. This show is a Stokastic and Fantasy Points collaboration. We're going to take a look at some of the best tools on both sites, both Stokastic and Fantasy Points. We've got some great tools to look at. We're going to look at them. We're going to find the best plays on the slate, find some contrarian plays for you. While you're coming in, please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Scott, how sad are you about all of the injuries on Thursday night? Joe Burrow, Mark Andrews. I mean, that is rough for a lot of us. I know you did some best ball this year. I don't know how much exactly you ended up doing, but does that hurt you? Does it help you? How are you feeling?
I did like 30 teams. It's like a superstition of mine. I don't want to check until week 17. I had so many good late round picks, potential league winners, tons of Keenan Allen, Miami running backs, things like that. And I have to imagine they're all dead because I drafted so many teams that were just Anthony Richardson, must pick. Okay, Daniel Jones, good value here. Aaron Rodgers, QB3, lock it in. We're good. Tons of Kirk Cousins, tons of Joey B. And so they're just dead. Like I laugh at all of these, week 17 is all that matters. I mean, come on. Like, yeah, you were stacking that Bengals Chiefs game because you're excited about what's this guy's name even? Jake Browning, what he's going to do.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's
crazy.
Not working out for anybody who is stacking up that game for sure. That's I only have 6% Joe Burrow. What hurts for me is that I draft so many just two quarterback teams, and at this point the quarterbacks are just eviscerated. Like, so many quarterbacks are out for the year. I drafted a ton of Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, a little bit of Jimmy Garoppolo, like all these quarterbacks. Just like, you really, like, this year I think it's kind of an outlier in that you really wanted more 3 quarterback builds because half the quarterbacks that you drafted this summer are out now for significant time for the year. So I'm left with my best team in the top 10,000 leaderboard. Gets you win a minimum of $250 in Best Ball Mania. My best team is a Cousins Burrow lineup. So now I'm left with 0 quarterbacks the rest of the way. And,
Yikes.
that's over 4 weeks. Like, your base, I guess it's only 3 weeks because Burrow got a little bit, but that's like 60 fantasy points. Like, it's going to be knocked out of the 10,000. I think I'll probably still get to the playoffs with that 0 QB team, but just like brutal. That's just like $250 down the drain at the very least. So yeah, it's painful, but what are you going to do? We're all in the same boat. We all lost all of our quarterbacks this year. Chris Ostro saying about that game, thank God for the second half showdown, won my money back. It was similar for me. I had lost on the showdown slate with all the injuries, but then ended up making it all back in the fourth quarter flash drafts. Was the way that I ended up profitable. The rare single game slate, it's my thing in the past. This year, the rare profitable slate for me on a single game slate, that Thursday night one. We're not here to talk about Thursday night, though. We are here to talk about the Week 11 main slate. I guess we do want to take a look back first. We typically like to look at last week's winning lineups first, and it was a big week. I'm sure you saw on Twitter. It's got big week for the stochastic tools. We had people using the stochastic sims took down the milli, the largest, actually no, not the largest, the 555 milli. So the midfield milli, short gamer TV won that using the stochastic sims. We also had somebody take down the 20 max 100K to first $3 entry. So really, really cool week to see the sims crushing it. But the one we're going to look at, because we build on this show for the largest field milli. So I think that's probably the one that we should look at first here. And I've got that pulled up. We can take a look at it. Actually, a friend of mine, Royal Payne, a guy that I've only met him once. I use the term friend. I like him. He's a good guy. But we've only actually met once. He won the milli once. I believe this is his 3rd milli maker win. Just incredible. Great DFS player. Won it with a Dallas double stack. Dak Prescott, Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb. No bringback. That kind of makes sense. You probably don't want any bringbacks from the Giants against the Cowboys. Has Najee Harris in here, who now is no longer the starting running back, even after scoring 18.6 fantasy points. Rashad White did pretty well. Did fine against Tennessee. Keenan Allen put up 43.5 fantasy points. Hawkinson, who I know you and I had been on, and then we get the report that he was going to play only in I forget what the key situations, and then he ends up playing most of the game, puts up 33 fantasy points. Trey McBride, I know, is one of your guys, got put up 24 fantasy points. And then the Cardinals defense, which, you and I were all over it, building with the Cardinals defense, didn't do anything. They put up 3 fantasy points, but still made it into the Millie Maker winning lineup because they were pretty cheap. What do you think about this lineup, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, these were all players we discussed. Interesting to see Dak Prescott come in so low, at least in this tournament. And I'm kind of looking at this and thinking about this upcoming week where I don't think Dak's going to be chalky, which is like so insane. And I think that's one of the keys to this week's slate. Shout out to this and CeeDee Lamb as well, and Rachaad White as well. All I think going to be a lot lower owned than these should be. And then Trey McBride every week, the GOAT. Yeah, really interesting. That Edward report was, that was wild. He ended up playing like a season high route share through the first 3 quarters of the game.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, this lineup makes a lot of sense. Easy, post hindsight, how to get there. Shout out to this guy. That's a great team.
Yeah, he's one of the best DFS players on the planet. As I said, I think it's his 3rd Millie Maker win. The one part, I don't even think we talked about Brandon Cooks last week. I ended up playing a little bit of Cooks just because I was playing so much of that game of the Dallas offense. I ended up saying, you know what, I think I should get to a little bit of Cooks, which I was obviously glad I did. Put up his biggest game of the year, 35 fantasy points. But that's the one piece that it's kind of like in retrospect looks obvious for against that Giants team getting 0 ownership. Or 1.6%. In some tournaments, I think he was actually under 1% also. But he hadn't really done it all year. So good for Royal Pain getting ahead of it. Really, really great lineup, obviously. I don't think I have any other notes on this one.
Yeah, I wasn't on Brandon Cooks at all. But that was sharp. I mean, it just makes sense. You're going to play Dak. Why not, dub stack him? And Ferguson was going to be owned, and, Hawkinson and McBride were both insane values. So why not just go with that wide receiver? Cooks had not seen any volume up to that point, and he did run especially good. Giants were without their CB1, and then their 2 starting cornerbacks both left the game early with injury, but still, like, I think that was a really sharp call.
I also wonder how contrarian it was, like how many lineups total in the Millie Maker would have a Dak double stack that also had 2 tight ends in it that neither of them are Ferguson. Like, I bet that was kind of a rare construction to have the Dak double stack without Ferguson and still use 2 tight ends in the lineup. I'm guessing that most lineups that had Dak that had 2 tight ends had Ferguson as one of those tight ends. So that's kind of an interesting.
I mean, again, it's so easy post hindsight to just be like, oh, that was smart. Yeah. But it's like the volume McBride and Hawkinson we're seeing was like 5K, 3,500. Like, if they were just a wide receiver, you'd be like, they're the best plays of the slate. So,
right.
Yeah, I do think that was sharp.
And then I'll just pull up Short Gamers, since he had one lineup, use the stochastic sims to make his lineup. So I feel like I got to at least shout it out. And this is actually, I don't have this read, but I do want to note, just in case we have anybody who's not aware, we do have 20% off right now of these stochastic sims. You can find the link in the description of this video. It's 20% off, and the final day of that is Monday. Great time, obviously, to take advantage of all of the tools, both of our sites, Scott, because we have extra football this week with Thanksgiving coming up, Black Friday, extra football game. So a great time to take advantage of any tools you've been thinking about looking at that you haven't looked at yet. Now is a good time. But yeah, this one, Short Gamer uses stochastic sims, got to that double stack, and this was kind of the more obvious Dallas double stack, Dak with CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, who was fine. I mean, he was 4,600, put up 12.6 fantasy points, didn't like crush it, but worked out okay. He also got to Hawkinson in this one. Amon-Ra St. Brown was my favorite wide receiver last week. Glad to see him. He wasn't even in I don't think he was in the main Millie Maker winning lineup, but he made it into this one. And then, of course, Scott, your guy, gotta point this out. Your guy, Noah Brown, made in here. And of course, he was chalkier this week after you got him like completely contrarian play last week. This week, a little bit chalkier, but still paying off. Sadly, you can't play him. We can't go back to Noah Brown this week, Scott, because he's already out. Devin Singletary.
I think he's technically questionable, but like,
oh, is he?
Almost definitely not going to play, but
okay.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah.
And then he has the Singletary with Texans correlation there, a little bit of added correlation. Really, really great looking lineup. Any notes on this one, Scott, or just nice lineup?
Yeah, that's another nice lineup. Don't really have too much to add.
Yeah, won $1 million. Hard to really nitpick too much after you win $1 million. But again, has the double Dallas stack, no bring back from the Giants. Another thing to know, and then another double tight end lineup. I guess that's another note here. Both of these had the double tight ends in them. I think that'll do it for looking at last week's slate. And Scott, sadly slash kind of a relief, you finally lost in Survivor, so we can stop doing our Survivor picks now.
Thank God.
Yeah, you had your Bills pick last week. I don't think anybody's watching this show for the Survivor picks. I kind of felt like we needed to continue doing it until you finally lost. So finally, the Bills were the team that lost it for you.
They're one of those teams where, like, I know, like, favored by 14, but you never feel good about picking them in this because they just have these letdown spots, seemingly like 1 out of every 6 weeks. I wanted to just touch back quickly upon double tight end in the flex. I was writing up some tight end who was seeing like an insane target share over the last 3 weeks or whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, he has to, rank, top 3. And then I look at it and it's like, we're seeing this like massive, especially in recent weeks, massive spike in target volume, target share for some of these tight ends. And I think this could be another week where tight end in the flex is very viable. But yeah, just that was something that popped out to me earlier in the week. So wanted to bring that up. Yeah,
good call there. We've been seeing the double tight end thing working out pretty well. And yeah, it looks like, I mean, we'll talk about tight ends once we get there. All right. So we can, I guess, move on. So, since we're skipping over the Survivor stuff, we can move right on to the main slate, Scott. And we have plenty of good quarterbacks, good contrarian looking quarterbacks to talk about on this slate. I will say, by the way, we didn't take a look at our lineup, Scott, but we did have exactly one of our lineups. We only cashed one lineup last week. Do you have any guesses which one it was? Based on my tone, any context cues you want
to? Was it Stroud?
It was the Rico Dowdle lineup.
Oh,
one that I forced you to make at the end.
Hell yeah.
And what's his? Who else was it? It was Rico Dowdle and
Charbonnet.
Charbonnet. Yeah, we did that. Which honestly, it was like I probably wouldn't have said I want to play them together, but we made a lineup playing them together. We did the Goff. It's funny. We did the Goff double stack. We did Quentin Johnston as the bring back. We had Jamar Chase in that one. In retrospect, we should have switched Jamar Chase to Keenan Allen, who went completely off. Although Quentin Johnston also worked out well in that spot, but we cashed. It didn't exactly crush it, but we at least cashed that one with the backup running backs. And then I also wanted to throw up Silence. Shout out to Scott for the Noah Brown call. Helped me 5x my money last week. 2 weeks in a row. You've been all over Noah Brown. 2 weeks in a row, Noah Brown has been crushing it.
Is his name Silent Ass Asian?
It sure is. I missed that. So you're right. It is. That's really funny. All right. So let's talk about some quarterbacks this week, and we'll find a new Noah Brown, since I don't think he's going to play, even if he is still questionable. We'll see if Scott has anybody there. But we're going to start at quarterback, Scott. Just sorting by top stack odds here. Actually, no, we usually like to start by talking about ownership, right? We should talk about the highest owned plays. How are you feeling about, and we don't have any real chalk here, but currently we have Purdy as the highest owned quarterback on the slate at just over 11%. We've got Dak at 9%. Seattle, we have Gino at 9%. We have Kyler at 9%. How are you feeling about these chalky quarterbacks? Anybody you love? Anybody that you're fading from this group? What do you think?
Yeah, I like Purdy. I always love Purdy, especially at home. Hole you can poke in him is like Christian McCaffrey's going to steal all the touchdowns. It's also difficult to stack him, picking between McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. That's a counter argument for him. You have Dak at 9.3%, and you've done this every single week. You have always said, or stochastics tools have said, that he's going to be higher owned than he is. I do not think he's going to be highly owned. I listened to ETR. ETR didn't even mention him, didn't even mention CeeDee Lamb. They spent 15 minutes talking about Cooper Kupp. I think he's going to go low owned. And I think he's one of the best plays of the slate. Like you've played Dak how many weeks in a row now, and it's made you so much money. Just keep doing that. I can't get on board with Seattle top 3. I think that's stupid. Geno has 2 games with at least 16.5 DraftKings fantasy points this year. None of the wide receivers have done anything, haven't flashed a ceiling at all. So I don't know. I'm not really on that. But yeah, Purdy, Dak, Kyler, and then Howell, like all that certainly checks out to me. There is a game and a game stack that I'm massively in love with. That's not in that mix. I'd bet Kyler and Stroud come in a little higher owned as well, but yeah, this looks good.
Okay, so you think Stroud coming in over 8% here? Kyler over 9.
Yeah, probably.
It is a game that's kind of pop in as just like all of the pieces of it are relatively inexpensive. It's one of those like ugly games that I often like to target in DFS where just too, I guess maybe it's not because Houston at this point looks like a great offense. So I guess my point doesn't stand, but I often like to play uglier games that people are not on. But this looks like a game that could go a lot of different directions, but it does appear that people are on most sides of the game. So wouldn't be surprising if you're right that it ends up a little bit higher owned. Let's move on. Let's talk about some of the lower owned stacks that you do like on this slate. Who are some of your favorites?
Again, like Purdy, love Dak. Who do you think beyond that is my favorite GPP quarterback?
Your favorite GPP quarterback? I don't know if this is contrarian enough for me to think it's going to be your favorite, but Tua?
No. I'm surprised you're not on it.
That you are on. Let's see. Who should I be on? Let's see here. I mean, I love Tua here. What do you say? You think Chat's gonna get it? I'm trying to think of somebody super contrarian. Is it Justin Herbert?
It's not super contrarian.
Okay. Is it Justin Herbert?
No. Dude, it's Justin Fields. How is it not Justin Fields? Chris Ostro got it. Shout out chat. Brand J1 got it. Shout out chat. Neil.
Yeah, well done, chat.
Why wouldn't it be Justin Fields?
Because there are so many good quarterback options on this. I think Fields, like, to me, is
who has better 40-point DK upside? No one. No one. No one has more 40-point DK games over the last 2 seasons. Listen, he averaged over his last 2 full healthy games 31 fantasy points per game. That was with just 4.1 rushing fantasy points per game. This is like the stat I had in my article. It was in 3 NFL seasons, Fields had never eclipsed 17 passing fantasy points. That's something CJ Stroud has done already 5 times. That was true up until his last 2 healthy games where he eclipsed 27 passing fantasy points in back-to-back games. Then he suffered that injury. And so it looked like Fields was flashing this absurd, impossible passing fantasy ceiling where the passing production was there, the rushing volume was there. In his last healthy game, he had 10 design rushing attempts. That still ranks second most among of any quarterback in any game this season. Just insane ceiling, insane median projection. And he's 6,900. That's the 3rd cheapest he's been in, 20 games, something like that. And he's, and then there's the matchup, right? What did we talk about? We mentioned this on one of our shows. Detroit, I believe, really struggles against hypermobile quarterbacks. You look at just the Konami code quarterbacks over the last 2 seasons, you see 25 DK fantasy points to Jalen Hurts, 43 to Justin Fields, 31 to Josh Allen, 21 to Justin Fields, but 16 of that came on the ground, 38 to Lamar Jackson just a few weeks ago. And that's the case with some of these defenses. It's true historically, typically, of Belichick's man-heavy defenses, and I think it's true of this defense. And so what are you betting on with Fields? It's just like, hey, if he's just like 80% of who he was right before he got hurt, he breaks the slate. But the thing is, like, it's not just Fields I love. I do love the opposite side of that. And I love, this is a great game to same game parlay and just hammer overs, hammer Fields rushing overs, hammer Goff passing overs, and a bunch of receivers as well. Jared Goff, always want to be playing him at home. Since joining Detroit, he averages 6 more fantasy points per game at home than on the road. You look at his like top 12 highest scoring games, something like 11 were at home. It's like legitimately crazy. Graham Barfield at our site, he doesn't buy into the home road splits. He thinks they're Detroit is push splits, but like, okay, he has that in his favor as well. Goff averages 25 DK fantasy points per game when their implied total is 25 or more. It's 27.75 this week. It's a top 5 matchup on paper. It's a top pass funnel matchup on paper. It's an ideal schematic matchup on paper. Goff is a top 3 quarterback against single high. That's what Chicago is running at a top 5 rate over the last 4 weeks. And so just, you have all these boxes you're checking, and, it checks every single box here. I really wouldn't be surprised if Fields hits the 100-yard rushing DK bonus this week and Goff hits the 300-yard passing bonus. Again, it is a pass funnel matchup, which with the running backs healthy, seems to be a crucial point. And so I like that a lot.
All right. So you are all over. I did a guest spot yesterday on the player profiler stream with Chase Vernon, and he was all over Fields too. Fields was his favorite quarterback. He told me he's going to have Fields in at least 25% of his lineups. What do you think? Like, are you that in on Fields that you could get behind getting Fields in? If you're playing 20 lineups, 5 or more of them?
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, I like Dak more. Okay. I like both of these quarterbacks a lot. Let's talk about Houston and Arizona again. I do think those quarterbacks going to be more highly owned than you're showing, or at least that's what our site is showing. And one thing with that is I think finally the stacks are a little easy. You can't pull it up in our data tool. I could if I had the option to screen share, but this tool I've been teasing for a number of weeks now should really just be a few days away. And it's our coverage shells matchup tool. And if you look at that, it really makes things easy for you in terms of who to stack here. Because this for Houston side, this is a coverage shell matchup that Dalton Schultz destroys. Tank Dell destroys. They're top 10 among 150 qualifying receivers against this coverage shell, whereas Robert Woods, Noah Brown, and Nico Collins all rank bottom 20. So that kind of makes things easy. And then on Arizona's side, it's basically the exact same thing. Hollywood is their man beater. He's destroying man. He really struggles against zone. The exact opposite is true of Michael Wilson. And so digging into this matchup, it's a matchup we should expect Hollywood to struggle and Trey McBride to go as nuclear as ever. It's a great opportunity for a spike week for Michael Wilson, and also like great spot for Rondale Moore. But I just think, I don't know. I know he had 8 targets last week and actually some air yards. I just don't think he's real. I think he was just like I think Greg Dortch outplayed him, and he was just a function of the Cliff Kingsbury slot heavy scheme. So I would cross him out personally. But the scheme here kind of makes those stacks a little more straightforward. Obviously, CJ Stroud in the MVP conversation is a great play. Although I do worry about Devin Singletary, who has the highest rushing yardage prop of any player on the week. And it's 10 rushing yards more than anyone else, including, McCaffrey and Eckler and Josh Jacobs and Travis Etienne. That's what I think about that. I think it's a good game, but I think ownership's going to ultimately reflect it. Anyone else you want to pick my brain on? I do have a laundry list of contrarian quarterbacks as well.
Well, I while you were talking there, I was trying to find the option of letting you share your screen and could not find it briefly. So we're not going to be able to get
Yeah,
you
I mean,
on
I
right
shouldn't,
now.
still in beta. They might get mad at
Okay.
me. So
All right, all right. Well, we couldn't do it anyway. Yeah, I mean, Tua to me stands out as my favorite. I mean, just looking at the top stack. So we've got Tua at 5% ownership with a 13% chance that the Miami stack is the best on the board, 7% chance that it's the best point per dollar on the board. So it is expensive, but we still have it as a 7% chance of being top value on the board. What do you think of the Miami stack this week?
yeah, I mean, I like Miami. I'm gonna like Tua every single week. This is the most explosive offense in football. You can argue that the return of Devon A-Chain actually benefits him, and I think that's probably true. And I think you can stack him with the running backs. How many times have we seen a Miami onslaught stack work to success? I think this is, obviously Tyreek has the most upside or single game upside of any wide receiver in fantasy. Obviously, our guy Jalen Waddle is massively overdue for a spike week, and so yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he's a very good play. Yeah,
Okay. A couple more. Actually, there are plenty that I want to
yeah,
pick your
let's
brain
do it.
about. Detroit. I mean, obviously, you kind of already said when we were talking about Fields that you like that side of the game too. Do you think you're going to have some with Goff, or are you just focusing on Fields as a quarterback when you're stacking that game?
No, I mentioned that again. Like I like same game betting, same game parlays on that. And I do really like Goff. Again, he had everything working in his favor. It's a home game. It's a great matchup. It's a pass funnel matchup. It's an ideal schematic matchup. Easy to stack, just like Fields, I think. So he's a great play. I prefer Fields because like I think he hits the 100-yard rushing bonus, but like I think they're both awesome plays.
Okay. Jacksonville against this Tennessee pass funnel defense. Any interest in Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram?
No, because I've been a Trevor Lawrence hater since day one,
Yeah.
and I've seen nothing to get me to back off of that. And the receivers have no spike weeks this year, and you said it's a pass funnel when I'm really not seeing that, at least not over the last 7 weeks or 5 weeks, whatever it is. Tennessee is giving up the third most rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. I think the opposite side of that is significantly more interesting. Will Levis, he was like our contrarian play, and he was the third highest owned quarterback in the Millie Maker. That was crazy, but it's a favorable matchup on paper. But like digging into the advanced metrics, this could be like a perfect spot, because what has plagued Will Levis dating back to college? Every analyst was like, he struggles under pressure. He has the highest pressure to sack ratio of any quarterback in this class. If he could just fix that, he would be an easy top 3 pick, blah, blah, blah. And so this might be the matchup for it. Jacksonville ranks bottom 6 in pressure rate, bottom 8 in average time to throw allowed. Those are crucial points to Will Levis. It's also a top 3 pass funnel. And so I just don't think anyone's going to play him. He's just dirt cheap, and you obviously play him with DeAndre Hopkins. So he's 1.2%. Yeah, he should be owned higher than that. Not a play I'm going to go all in on, but definitely better upside than that suggests.
Yep. Here's one that I'm struggling to like. Our tools seem to really like this Buffalo stack as a contrarian option, just because we have Josh Allen at 4.6% ownership. I think we have Steph Diggs at sub 2% ownership as well. So we've got positive leverage there on Buffalo. It's tough because to me, I get why it's positive leverage, because it's clearly one of those stacks that I think Buffalo can probably do it against any defense in the league. At the same time, such a tough secondary there for the Jets that I'm kind of like, I see why we're not getting there a lot. Do you have any interest in playing a contrarian Bills stack?
The Jets really own Josh Allen. They really own him, and he knows it. That's where that presser clip came from, where it was like, same shit, same place, different day. Like he owns them, and they live rent free in his head, and it's bad. But this is the number 1 overall quarterback in fantasy. He averages 3 more fantasy points per game than any other quarterback in the slate. he's doing that despite running significantly less. And I believe that was a Ken Dorsey thing. Because remember, we talked about this early in the season. There was that quote from Ken Dorsey where it's like, well, we're going to pull back on the rushing. We want to preserve his health. And then we're going to add it back in somewhere around halfway through the season. And so maybe Joe Brady is just like, well, I'm playing, for a job here, or calling plays for a job here. So why don't I just spam that cheat code, especially against this tough pass defense? And it's really just, the number one quarterback in fantasy shouldn't ever be only, or sub 5% owned. He's still not very high on my list, but I certainly get that argument, and it's compelling to a degree.
Yeah, just for large field stuff. Both of these quarterbacks in the Chargers-Packers game look kind of interesting here. Obviously, looking at the tools here, Justin Herbert looks like the far more interesting side of it at sub 4% ownership, 10% chance of being the top stack there for the Chargers. We do have Keenan Allen. Sounds like he's going to play in this one. But I know you are one of the people. I was telling Greg earlier, I feel like I've been peer pressured week after week. Sharp people keep telling me to play Christian Watson, and I keep doing it. And now this week he's down to 4,600. We've got him at sub 6% ownership. So there's a part of me that thinks maybe I need to go back to the Jordan Love, Christian Watson connection in a nice matchup with the Chargers. Do you have any interest in either of these quarterbacks in the Chargers-Packers game?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a best possible matchup for Jordan Love. He's 2,000 cheaper than Herbert. I know he stinks, but he really hasn't been terrible for fantasy. He's just like 1.4 fantasy points per game off of Goff, who's 1,000 more expensive. And this is a matchup that is worth 5 fantasy points per game over your average in comparison to a perfectly neutral matchup. This is the ultimate spot. And then for Herbert, it's not a great matchup, but he just showed us last week he can hit 30 plus DK in a bad matchup, and he probably shouldn't ever be sub 4% owned because of it. Allen's the QB1, but Herbert's right there behind him. I do worry about the health of Keenan Allen and the receiving core behind that, but he still found a way to get that done last week. You just might be better off playing Eckler and Keenan as one-offs, but nonetheless, yeah. So you look right there, right? And so what schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed, it's the GOAT matchup tool is saying is against versus a perfectly neutral matchup. We should expect we should expect Jordan Love to score 5 more fantasy points per game than his typical average. If you want to scroll all the way to the bottom.
Yep. Let me get to. Okay.
Yeah. And so the difference between a matchup against the Jets and a matchup against the Chargers is worth 9.2 fantasy points per game. That's crazy. So I think people overrate or overstate the significance of matchups. It really is overrated, probably on the whole, because the middle bulk of your sample is basically worthless. 1.2 down to minus 2.6. I don't care about that. Really, the polar extremes matter the most, and they matter a lot for DFS. So, if nothing else for Jordan Love, he does have a great matchup this week.
Yeah. So that's kind of the best case you can make for Jordan Love. Not maybe the most talented, but great matchup. And we'll talk about, I guess, who we would stack if it is Christian Watson or somebody else. We can talk about that, I guess, when we get to wide receivers. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that I feel we need to talk about here. I don't think I'm going to any of these at the bottom. These are pretty obvious stayaways for me up until Will Levis. I don't think I'm going to Baker. Don't think I'm going to Zach Wilson. Here's one that I want to talk about. Matthew Stafford looks phenomenal in the tools. Sub 2% ownership, 7% chance of the Rams being the top stack, and 5% chance of being the top value stack. Hasn't really hit yet with the Stafford double stack with both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I think I'm going to keep trying it though. Scott, do you have any interest in that?
Yeah, I don't get it. Why does he look amazing?
Because we have him at sub 2% ownership with a 7%.
Oh, right. All right. So if that's but you're saying he should be 7.3%. Why should he be 7.3% against a top 5 Seattle defense when I don't think he's fully healthy? Like, do we even know like he can grip a football for more than one quarter in this game? And then like even when he was healthy and Cooper Kupp was back, like we still weren't seeing ceiling performances from him, and he wasn't playing all that great. So
we have. It looks like is this not
so
saying
he
it's a
so
slight
yeah. Can you
positive
click
matchup?
on last 5 in the top right? Maybe I'm overstating it.
Okay, so Seattle is playing a lot better recently, is what you're saying.
Are they?
Oh, it looks
So
like
I
it.
guess to
Doesn't
your
look like
point,
it.
people are still scoring fantasy points on them, but giving up a ton to running backs on the ground. So maybe it's more of a
Yeah.
run funnel spot. But you're right. Yeah, it's wide receivers are really struggling against them.
Okay.
But
See, I guess
yeah.
I still think of Seattle as being a plus matchup for passing games, opposing passing games. So I think that's part of it. The matchup plus, just a condensed target tree with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua in general. I guess I can double check over the past. I guess I pulled up the past 2 weeks this one because we had some teams on by, but the Rams we can just see what the most recent game looked like. Yeah, we still had Puka Nacua 90%. 91% route participation, Cooper Kupp 84%, pretty elite. And then I guess they only had 13 targets between them. Tutu Atwell was in there with 7, but still fairly condensed between
Well,
those
Stafford didn't
3.
play in that game, but like
Good
you
point.
look at even that game plus, when Stafford was healthy, Nakua's fallen short of 45 receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games. Kupp averages 32.7 yards per game over his last 3. And I like I said, like ETR was talking all about Stafford and the receivers. And I don't know. I'm not seeing this baked into, and they move ownership. And so like, I'm not really seeing this baked in is just how bad things have gotten and the potential that like, why do we have any confidence that Stafford's healthy? This is a guy who plays through horrific injuries and he looks like shit doing so. And so that's just my concern. But I mean, like if we're talking about a guy at 1.8%, we have him, I think, probably a lot above that, but yeah,
Okay.
hard to argue against if that's real.
Okay. So it's just we have different ownership projections, which is obviously going to change the way the play looks. Todd asking, wouldn't it be better if playing Stafford to just pick one of the wide receivers if it's that low, and why shoot trying for 2 expensive weapons? Yeah, I mean you could play it with one also. I think that they have enough volume that there's the potential, if Stafford is playing well, to pay them both off and just to limit the number of things you have to get right. But yeah, definitely something that you could go single stack instead of the double stack. I'm just saying it hasn't hit yet. I could see it hitting this week for the first time, and I don't think it's going to be super double stacked all that often.
Let me just cover my, like, I don't ever feel good about, fading like a Cooper Kupp or even Puka Nacua, like just insane volume. And like, they really looked incredible earlier in the year when I guess Stafford was fully healthy. But yeah, I think there's better spots.
Yeah, and then I guess Chris Oster did say, and I was thinking about bringing this up anyway, but Chris Oster said, curious to hear your thoughts, and you did already go over how much you love Dak, but Sam Howell, we haven't really talked about. It is a not very good Giants defense. We just saw that the Cowboys put up so many points on them. Sam Howell not afraid to throw the ball. What do you think of Sam Howell against this Giants defense?
Yeah, I love Howell. I love him every single week. He's worked out really well for me. The best argument against him is he's difficult to stack and he does spread the ball around quite a bit. But I mean, this is one of the most top 3 pass heavy offenses in football. He's on pace to set the NFL record for dropbacks. He scored over 28 DK in 3 of his last 6 games. And this is like a Giants defense. I say this as a Giants fan. This is a Giants team that's just given up. Like, I don't think they care. Howell scores 2 touchdowns in his first 2 drives. Like I see that team just like totally giving up. And this was a bad defense to start. And it's a severely banged up defense. They're down their CB1. They're down. They have 2 injured starting cornerbacks beyond that, 2 injured starting safeties beyond that. And I could see him going nuclear this week, the same way Dak went nuclear last week. Again, like the only issues there are, 1, I love Brian Robinson. 2, he's difficult to stack. I would like it. I know we focus more on the Millie here, but I would like him more in like a single entry, like a small field single entry. You could even stack him with B-Rob in that. But I do really like him. I think I had him actually above Goff in my rankings, but thinking about it, I might want to flip that.
All right. And I just want to respond to Todd saying naked Howell. I never really play naked quarterbacks. I don't know if you feel the same way, Scott. That's something that I used to do it a lot more frequently, especially with like really cheap quarterbacks. I would just run them out there naked, hope for the best. It's something that Alex Baker talked about a lot, that he never really does naked quarterbacks, just because, yeah, it certainly could work out. That could end up being the optimal lineup, having that naked quarterback. It's just you want to stack just to limit the number of things you need to get right. Like if you play a naked quarterback, first of all, you're hoping that the quarterback gets there without bringing along any pass catcher with him. But on top of that, that just means that you really need to hit a full-on nine leg parlay or whatever it is on DraftKings. However, I forget how many players exactly, but 8 or 9 leg parlay with your pick. So it's just something that honestly I never really do naked quarterbacks anymore. Is that something that you're at all interested in, Scott?
I mean, if they run enough, I'm into it. But if not, I'm with you. I think you're kind of seeding too much. You want that correlation, yeah.
Yeah. Any other quarterbacks you want to talk about, Scott?
Oh boy.
We've talked about almost all of them.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to play him, but like DTR is just insanely cheap, and he does have some Konami code potential. His last season at UCLA, he averaged 11.2 rushing fantasy points per game. He was also one of PFF's 5 highest graded quarterbacks in the preseason, and like per our sources, he's been really impressing them in practice. He even won a game ball a couple of weeks ago for playing the Lamar Jackson role in the scout team. That would be like a player you can trot out naked and just hope you like nailed all the expensive plays, and like, you know, he had a 40-yard rushing touchdown and that was enough. But that's super thin. Beyond that, I think we kind of hit on everyone.
Ready to talk about some running backs?
Sure.
All right, we'll move on. Take a look at the Boom Bust. Well, let me refresh it one more time just to make sure that we haven't had an update. Okay, no updates since 5 hours ago. I don't think we've gotten any news that would require an update. I'm just seeing a bunch of news coming through. I was checking my phone for breaking news, and it's all just a bunch of fines. Nothing exciting that affects us.
Did you adjust for the Tom Brady on retirement news, or are you thinking he's going to sit out this week?
Is Tom Brady gonna? I had not heard that Tom Brady is thinking of. I think I've seen like people joking about Tom Brady coming back. Is there anything that's actually to that?
Yeah, he just signed with the Packers.
No, we didn't.
No, I'm messing. Sorry, that was.
I would have heard that. He signed with the Packers.
Right. I don't know. I always get this urge to mess with you on these shows, and I usually never do it. Yeah,
that's fair. I get the same urge, but I do troll you a little bit on the show sometimes. Right. So I get it. It's a mutual feeling. We just want to troll each other, Scott. All right. Devin Singletary is the highest owned player in the stochastics. We've got Devin Singletary at 29%, highest owned by a mile, followed by Christian McCaffrey, number 2, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones are the 3 that are getting significant ownership here. So let's start with those 4. Any interest or what is your level of interest in Devin Singletary, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, and Aaron Jones relative to their projected ownership here?
I have a really hard time poking holes in these guys, to be honest. Singletary, like I said, leads the position in his rushing yardage prop, despite kind of historically being terrible. And, flopping 2 weeks ago before going off last week. Doesn't get a ton of target volume. But I mean, like, I get it at that price for sure. McCaffrey is he's just a god. Like, he had a bad week last week, and a bad game for him is a good game for anyone else. Over 20 fantasy points without a touchdown, without a 100-yard bonus. Like, he's just unreal. It's a brutal matchup this week, like last week. I just don't think that matters for a guy like McCaffrey. It is a pass funnel spot too, which helps Purdy, but McCaffrey could always get there as a receiver. I like Travis Etienne a lot. It seems like an awesome spot for him. Aaron Jones too. the one hole you could poke in that is like people think he's not game script dependent because he sees targets, but that's just like not the case this year. And like, that's never been the case in his career. Over the last 3 seasons, he averages 6 more fantasy points per game in wins than losses,
Wow.
in wins about 20 carries and losses about 12. That can make a big difference. I just don't know how much that matters this week, because even though Green Bay, the Packers are underdogs, they have a 20.5 point implied point total. With like Green Bay hasn't scored more than that in 7 straight games. So it could just be like, and it's a great matchup. You're just facing the Chargers. And so like every player's projection gets a boost, and he is such a large part of that offense that, he should probably get the biggest boost. Josh Jacobs, Breece Hall, James Conner, I would have an easier time poking holes in.
Okay, let's hear him.
Josh Jacobs, like the new coach is, he's the heartbeat of our offense. We want to get him to 100 rushing yards. And so you like look at recent volume following this coaching change, you see like a major uptick in carries and rushing yards, but a major drop off in target volume. He was at a 15.6% target share that ranks second best among all running backs. That's down to 3.8%. And that just feels like a crucial point to me. They're 12-point underdogs against the Dolphins. So I could really just see game script destroying him. And then James Conner is a similar thing where, everyone's like, oh, James Conner came back and he was a bell cow. And I would call that bell cow usage. I wouldn't call that bell cow volume, because he had 16 and 19 carries. That's great. But he had 0 targets. And that's long kind of been a Kyler thing. But this was also predating Kyler earlier in the season, averaging just 1.5 targets, a 4.8% target share. And so we look back on bell cow James Conner last season from week 10 on. He ranked behind only Christian McCaffrey in fantasy points per game, but that was because he had 5.1 targets per game, a 12.5% target share. So the offense struggling, poor game script didn't matter when you're getting that cheat code target volume. And so 5-point underdogs this week, it's a little concerning. I really think he's overrated at this ownership, but there's certainly a chance he hits the 100-yard rushing bonus and then gets a touchdown or 2 touchdowns and buries me. But I do think he shouldn't be so highly owned. And Breece Hall, I mean, he's another game script sensitive guy, right? This year he's averaging 23 fantasy points per game and wins, 8 fantasy points per game and losses. They're 7-point underdogs.
Do you think that he gets any uptick from Michael Carter being released? Like, could he be more involved in hurry up offense kind of situations?
There really isn't a ton of volume to go there. It was a lot of like empty snaps. It was a lot of pass blocking snaps. And the team has said that's more about Izzy Abanikanda than it is him. So like, even if it's not about Izzy, like I only would have given him like an additional 1 XFP points per game. I don't think it's a big deal. It never feels great fading Breece Hall, because he could just, go off for a 60-yard rushing touchdown. And like, maybe this is the week for it. Buffalo ranks bottom 6 in explosive run rate. But to me, I would say bad chalk on Jacobs, Hall, Connor personally. But Saquon Barkley as well. Like how much touchdown upside does he have in a Tommy DeVito led offense?
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, I want to just full fade the entire Giants offense going forward. I feel like this is the one week, if I'm going to play anybody from the Giants, it would be Saquon against the Commanders, but he is getting ownership. Like if he was coming in low owned, I would like him as a contrarian play, but at this level of ownership, I'm probably not going too much in on Barkley. Jacobs was one that I struggle with fading Jacobs. I think that I'm going to have him in a lot of my Miami stacks as bringbacks. I don't know that I'm going to go to as much of him as a one-off. Just
I would just go. I would just not have a bring back on the Raiders side personally.
Yeah,
because we've seen Miami just onslaught with the other team not doing anything.
But I think just given that volume, I mean, we have a small sample size where he is getting more volume, and as you say, he's not getting as much target volume. I guess I'm kind of hoping that maybe the target volume is going to return, and then he's going to have just enough volume at 6,800.
It could be. It could be. This is a defensive minded head coach now who like doesn't strike me as like the most forward thinking guy.
Okay.
And Jacobs was already one of the most game script dependent running backs in fantasy. And that was with a 15.6 target share that's now dropped to 3.8%. I mean, I definitely could be wrong. Like when a guy's this projects to be the fourth highest owned running back in the slate, he's probably a good call. To me, just looking at that though, like I'd rather bet the under.
And I think of Miami as being a great spot for running backs. And it looks like over the last 5 in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points to running backs.
Well, what about rushing? It looks like they're in the slightly in the green on rushing. Yeah, okay. I don't know. He breaks off a long run or two. Like he could definitely get there. He just, he's racking up, 4.5, 5.5 yards per carry in the first half. Like they'll just keep doing that.
Well, this is they're near the bottom in rushing, right? Negative 1.5 here.
No, that's QB rushing.
Oh, okay. My bad. Okay. So in terms of running back rush, I'm still figuring this chart out. I've been using it. I've been starting to integrate.
I use the Control F. That helps me because it's kind of hard to find otherwise.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So it's a fine matchup. Maybe not as good as it was.
Neutralish. Yeah.
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 All right. I think we need to talk about Tony Pollard. I think that's just because they are playing Carolina again. And last week, everybody played him against the Giants, didn't get it done. Is Tony Pollard just like not going to get it done this year, or do you think he has a shot to do it against Carolina?
Yeah, it seems like everyone's a masochist, right? Every week, Tony Pollard's top X in ownership, and like every week he just destroys you, and people still want to play him. That's the argument against him. The argument for him is like, I legitimately think there's a good chance this is the week. And then if it's not, we just never talk about him again, Neil.
Yeah.
We just have that agreement between us. I think this really could be the week. People look at Dowdle going off last week, and that was exclusively in garbage time. If you take out when Dak Prescott came out of the game, so just the first 3 full quarters, Pollard had a 90% snap share that would have led all running backs. He was just, 3 inches from 2 rushing touchdowns, right? And so he was uber chalk last week. He has come down a little bit. And the on-paper matchup is a run funnel matchup. Carolina, go back to the schedule adjusted, look over the full season. You'll see Carolina ranks second best by passing fantasy points per game allowed.
By passing fantasy points to running backs?
No, to quarterbacks.
Oh.
Am I
doing this wrong?
It's
very possible I'm doing this wrong.
Here, Control F car. Maybe my numbers are wrong.
F. All right, so we have...
Am I wrong? Oh, yeah, second best. Duh. All right, so scroll all the way down. Carolina ranks second best in... We're making this tool seem so confusing. I promise it's not. Is second best against quarterbacks, right? Yep. And now click on running backs on the ground, because that's what matters for Pollard, because he's losing target volume in recent weeks. Second worst against running backs on the ground. What does that tell you? It tells you it's a terrible matchup for Dak, and it's a great matchup for Pollard. So why do I like Dak so much? It's because, we should have done this earlier, but like, it's so scary to fade the guy who has hit 30 plus DK in 3 straight games. Since before the bye, they were like a bottom 5 run heavy offense, or a top 5 run heavy offense. And then post bye, they're one of the top 3 most pass heavy offenses. Like they didn't need to lean that pass heavy against the Giants last week, but they did. And then just add in CeeDee Lamb and how insane he's been. That stack has scored 47, 76, 64, 84 DraftKings fantasy points over the last 4 games. It's just been this massive cheat code. So like, why walk that back? I'll also say like, Carolina is down. JC Horn's not coming back this week. Their other starting cornerback, CJ Henderson's out. And I was digging into the numbers. So you know me, like I'm a big XFP guy. I was digging into the numbers. And this is a little conspiratorial, but digging into the numbers. And so like by efficiency, Carolina is actually top 12 against running backs on the ground and bottom 12 against wide receivers by fantasy points versus XFP. That's not a great stat because volume is efficiency. Shout out Adam Harstead for continually beating that drum. So it's not great, but it is just like, I could see this being a lot like the game last week where Dallas could just do whatever they want. And as of late, they've been wanting to do it through the air. And really like Carolina looking like such a run funnel could just be because Bryce Young stinks and game script. And so it's just the same matchup as last week. So I do really like both Dak and Pollard. As insane as it sounds to like Pollard, I do like him. And I expect to have heavy ownership on both, where I have my Dak stacks and then I have some Pollard on non-Dak lineups.
So you're not going to play them together?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and Tony Pollard, yeah, to me, that was one of the first things I saw on the slate is, oh my God, are we going to have to play Tony Pollard again? And I think I'm with you. I think I'm going to go back to Tony Pollard and just hope that he gets there this week.
Apparently Dowell's questionable. I missed that. That's what Muhammad Ba is saying in chat.
Dowell. Who's Dowell?
Dowdle. No.
Rico Dowdle.
He practiced in full all week, unless he just picked something up today.
No, he is questionable today. Yeah, as of today, Rico Dowdle is questionable. That is correct. So that could be even more volume for Tony Pollard.
He practiced in full all week. Do you know if this is a late injury? So it's a late injury.
Yeah, so it just came up today. So yeah, seems like actually questionable.
Wow.
So we can't go back to Rico Dowdle. I know you're going to be devastated to hear.
That's more good news for Pollard, but he was
I
already at 90% of the snaps.
Yeah. That was honestly, I was after Dowdle on really limited snaps last week, picked up 50 yards in the first half. I was feeling so good about the possibility of 100 yards and a touchdown in the third quarter when Dallas was up 4 touchdowns. I was like, oh my God, Rico Dowdle is definitely going to crush. And then they kept on like, Pollard was out there like midway through the fourth quarter. Like they just kept Pollard out there. So yeah, all signs point to Pollard, especially if Dowdle is out, going to be getting some volume, continue to get the volume this week. All right. I feel like we got to talk about these Detroit guys because we have Jahmyr Gibbs getting significantly more ownership, 12% ownership going to Jahmyr Gibbs. We have sub 1% going to David Montgomery, going up against his former team in the Bears, which I know we don't really want to get too narrative here, but as I said on the earlier show that I did, the one place that I will factor that in a little bit is I don't think David Montgomery gives up that goal line touchdown to Jahmyr Gibbs against his former team. I think he would just take it in this scenario. So maybe that's the one place that I factor in the revenge. But regardless of the revenge narrative, David Montgomery just gets enough volume. Seems like a nice spot against the Bears for me. What do you think of Jahmyr Gibbs and or David Montgomery?
No, I think that's a really sharp observation. I think that's right. There might even be a chance he was like, listen, I got you this week. You get me next week.
Yeah, right.
And so you look at the game, and Detroit's favored by 7.5 points. They have the highest implied point total on the slate. Is that right?
Is that right?
No, that's not right. But it's one of the highest.
Miami is, but
yeah, of course. They have
but regardless, one of the highest on this list.
The second highest. Apologies, folks. And so massive touchdown upside. I will just say I do prefer Gibbs, and I think that ownership projection's on point. You look at what happened last week. And this was a take I had this offseason. I don't remember if I tweeted it out or if I just almost tweeted it out 5 separate times, but it was like I could easily see Jahmyr Gibbs smashing Bijan Robinson in terms of fantasy points per game, just because this backfield is so much more valuable and better projected target volume. And there's a chance like the committee is like similar. And so what we saw last week was Gibbs outsnapped Montgomery 37-24. He outcarried him 14-12 and then out-targeted him 5-0. This is a game Detroit never once trailed. It was more competitive than that, more competitive than this game's going to be. But like that's game script that theoretically should better suit David Montgomery. So this is notable to me how much more valuable his role was than Montgomery, where, Montgomery could score that 1 yard rushing touchdown, but if Gibbs gets 6 catches, that's equivalent to a touchdown. And the matchup, you look at the matchup definitely better suits Gibbs' skill set. The Bears are giving up the second fewest rushing yards per game, but the most receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. And again, five targets to 0 last week for Gibbs. So, not one of my favorite plays of the slate, but like you're telling me 12.2% ownership. I think that's good. 15% ownership, like that makes a ton of sense to me.
Okay. I want to, Jason did not pay us to say this, but I just want to read out Data Suite rocks combined with these stochastic sims. I will get out of the way of my own biases. That's awesome to hear, Jason. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do on this show, combining the best tools in the industry, both of our sites. So awesome to hear that you are taking advantage of all the tools at your disposal. I saw somebody else, Justin just said that he just sub to Fantasy Points as well. Yeah, a lot of great content.
Yeah, shout out to Fantasy Points. This is why we're doing this show. Like, I'm sick of being the best kept secret in the industry. Really believe we have the best football and college football and spring football content, DFS analysis, data, tools, Discord, shows. Yeah, please give us a shot. We're 50% off or 75% off, depending on what you're talking about. And really think we have the best site in the game. So shout out to fantasypoints.com.
Yeah, some great, and I'm friendly with a lot of the people at Fantasy Points, a lot of sharp talent at Fantasy Points. So yeah, I can certainly get behind Fantasy Points as a great content and tools place. Of course, I will also add, if you haven't already signed up for Stochastic, and a lot of you probably already have, but if you haven't, I also think the Stochastic DFS tools are the best DFS tools in the industry. They've done extremely well.
Best DFS site in the game for sure.
Yeah, so check out, whatever you're looking for, you can find it. The links in the description of this video. And Scott, I'm assuming you don't have any kind of Black Friday deals going on, anything like that, because everything's already so cheap.
Yeah, click on plans at the top right.
Plans.
We're 50% off on Fantasy Points Premium. So that's $45 for the remainder of the year. Again, we're insanely cheap. That was a stupid decision by us to go this cheap, but it is what it is. The 75% off the data suite, $50. So check that out.
Yep. And we have just the as far as I know right now, the only deal we have going on is the Millie deal. So it's 20% off any of our packages, not including the lineup generator, as far as I know. But you use the link in the description of this video. If it doesn't pre-populate, then just throw in Millie is the discount code to get that 20% off whatever deal you want at Stochastic. It's going to include the Sims. It's going to include this data is included with our data packages as well. So that's the deal we have going on right now. I'm actually not sure if we're going to have, you can see it right here at the top of this page.
Do you guys have an optimizer?
We have Fantasy Cruncher on the site, but that is an add-on. So you can include buying Fantasy Cruncher, the optimizer. At this point, you don't necessarily need the optimizer. At one point, you needed to build your lineups in Fantasy Cruncher. At this point, we provide the field of lineups for you in the Sims tool. So you don't need the optimizer, but it is an add-on that you can buy the Fantasy Cruncher optimizer. We're partnered with them. So if you are looking for an optimizer, you can find that at Stochastic as well. Just an additional purchase there. All right. Well, I had no intention of doing a read right there. So talking about the tools, but since we got that nice shout out from Jason, that was a good point. Good time to just bring up the tools that he is talking about, because a lot of people I think have been having success listening to our show and then just using the tools, consuming the content themselves. So I do recommend all of the tools we've talked about, both of our sites. All right.
We haven't yet talked about the best running back play of the slate, regardless of ownership.
Best running is it Brian Robinson?
It's Brian Robinson.
You already kind of alluded to how much you like Brian Robinson. I mean, yeah, no Antonio Gibson this week, going up against that Giants defense that has just been not good. He's only 5,800. Is there more to it than that, Scott?
I'm kind of mad about the Gibson injury, because I had him as a top 3 running back prior to that as well. He's fantasy football's RB6 in full season fantasy. You got to look at,
is he really?
On a per game basis, he'll fall, but like RB6, Price is the RB17. He's another game script dependent running back, and victories He's averaging 5 more fantasy points per game, 17.2 per game. Washington is favored by 9 points against a Giants defense that ranks bottom 3 in schedule adjusted rushing fantasy points to opposing running backs. Great matchup. That's like only getting better because, I think this team is just giving up. And he hit a season high in route share, target share, targets last week. And there's massive potential if that sticks. And like, obviously without Antonio Gibson, I think we should think that sticks, because believe it or not, it's a small sample, but Brian Robinson leads all of 180 qualifying receivers in fantasy points per target this year. He ranks second in depth adjusted yards per target over expectation. When he was coming out of college, there were people in Alabama's building who were confident that Brian Robinson was better than Najee Harris and was like a super underrated receiver. So just add in Gibson's typical work, ideally, to Robinson. I think even without that, he was a top 3 play. And now I think he's an even better play than Singletary at price and certainly at ownership.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who scores more fantasy points this week? So we're not concerned about ownership at all. Brian Robinson or Devin Singletary?
Yeah, I would say Brian Robinson personally, but it is definitely close. That was my number 1, number 2 top plays for cash this week.
Yeah, they seem like pretty obvious cash plays to me. I definitely like both of them as well. Just had to put you on the spot there. So if you're wrong, I can go clip it, show Scott being wrong, just ask you. I'm kidding, obviously. Yeah, Brian Robinson certainly seems like a fantastic play to me. Honestly, I was surprised to see he only came up to 10.5% projected ownership with the Antonio Gibson news. Maybe it'll come up more by tomorrow, but I agree with you. Looks like a fantastic play. Can't ask for a much better spot there than Brian Robinson.
We haven't yet talked about my second favorite, and third favorite GPP plays.
All right. Do you want me to try to guess them, or what?
Sure,
what do we?
Sure.
All right.
You got. Yeah. I mean,
we haven't talked about Austin Eckler at all.
Okay, he's number 2. He's my second favorite GPP running back play, and especially at 8%. We have him projected for 13%, so I like him significantly more if he gets squeezed to that degree. I think we just know who he is, which is like the same old Austin Eckler, who's been a fantasy juggernaut for years. 14 and 19 carries in every game, 7 or more targets in 3 straight. That should continue without Josh Palmer, with Keenan Allen banged up. Like, imagine if Keenan goes down, misses a few drives with an injury. Rushing efficiency is not going to be great, but there's always that, like, every 4th game, he just randomly has 167 rushing yards and massive touchdown upside every single week. He's still cheap. He's 400 less than his average salary last year. He had a bottom 5 matchup last week. He gets a fringe top 10 matchup this week. And I think like he's a lock for, I don't know, like 7 receptions and massive touchdown equity. So I think he's an awesome play.
Yeah, it looks like like we've got him slightly overowned, but I still think I'm willing to get there some.
Overowned? Oh, I can't. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we have him only optimal 5% of the time. I think that Scott is just a function of in the Sims, all of the cheaper running backs just like scoring so many points so frequently that he ends up being squeezed out. But I certainly think, and that's also, by the way, the optimal lineup, which you don't need the optimal lineup. So maybe in terms of like the winning lineup, he would pop in there and actually have some positive leverage. But in the optimal lineup, we have him not getting in there quite so much. I think because we end up having, these cheap guys getting into the optimal lineup so frequently. But yeah, I can certainly get behind Eckler as a play. Also somebody that I might even be willing to pair with Justin Herbert, who actually looked kind of underowned. Definitely an interesting play. All right, let me see if I can guess the other one. And I thought similar thought to Chris Ostro, who guessed Achane. I'm going to go with Mostert would be my guess. Who is it, Scott?
It's Achane.
It's Achane.
For sure.
Ostro, I think he's nailed it twice. Two of yours already.
He might have read my article. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Shout out to Scott Barrett's Week 11 DFS breakdown. If you want to hear all my full plays in order and ranking, Yeah, it's Devon Achane for sure. I think he should like. Why wouldn't he be? Why isn't he 30% owned, Neil?
I think just because he doesn't get enough volume. Like he's not getting like 12,
Has that
15
slowed him
carries.
down at all?
No, but like, I mean, what do you think? Do you think he's going to average 13 yards per carry through his career?
It's one or the other. Either he's the greatest negative regression candidate I've seen in 7 years, or he's the second coming of Chris Johnson. And I don't feel confident one way or the other. All I know is over his last 3 games, he averaged 36.6 DraftKings fantasy points per game with a low of 25.5. I don't know why he's not 3,000 more expensive, and I don't know why he's not 35% owned. And what are you showing? Like, you're showing 1.5%. We were showing 9%. Either way, that's like ridiculously low.
No, we're showing 0.4% ownership.
Oh my goodness.
Optimal.
Yeah. So I would say like 30% optimal, 40%. Like I'm considering, I just entered the 10 max, and I consider going like damn close to all in, just because that upside is unbelievable, and it seems like the field's not on it. So like I think, like, what is keeping this ownership down? Because it doesn't make any sense. I don't think he's limited. Like, reading between the lines of the Mike McDaniel press conferences, I don't think he's going to be severely limited. It doesn't even matter, because he was smashing on a snap count anyway, or a touch count anyway. And if the only thing is, like, well, you do for a negative regression because the volume isn't as good, like, that's me. I'm the XFP guy, right? And like, here is approval. Like, some players are just game wreckers. That was true of Tyreek Hill, especially early in his career. That was true of early career Odell Beckham Jr. That was true of Doug Baldwin. That was true of Rob Gronkowski. Some players just wreck the game, and this guy really might be Chris Johnson 2.0. So like, the ceiling relative to the price, especially relative to ownership, I think he's easily one of the best plays in the slate. But here's the thing: is I like Raheem Mostert too. I like them both. Definitely prefer HM, but do like them both.
Yeah, and we have Mostert also coming in at relatively low ownership. I just want to pull this up because because, as you said, you are the expected fantasy point guy, but you did just give people permission to play HN, despite the fact that he has just 43.7 expected fantasy points on the year, but he's put up nearly 103. That is pretty nuts that he's just been that good on such limited volume. But yeah, I think to answer your question, why is he not getting 30% ownership? Why is he not 3,000 more expensive? I think it is just I think most of us are assuming some negative regression is coming for Devon Achane. Sub 40 carries in 4 games, so under 10 carries per game, only 10 targets across those 4 games. So just so far, the volume has not really been there for HN. It's just been extreme efficiency on his limited touches. And I think most of us are like, well, can you really keep that up? And we so far we've been saying it all year, and so far we've been wrong. He's been keeping it up every game. But I think that's the reason. That combined with, I think a lot of us have questions about, like, how healthy is he going to be? Is he going to be limited coming back? It sounds like you don't really have as much of a concern like with that. You think he's going to be full go right away.
Yeah, shout out to Chris again. Mike McDaniel called him untackleable in practice on Monday.
I did hear that.
Seems like and like that's whatever comp you want to use. Like, imagine if it was illegal to tackle Breece Hall. That's who Devon Achane. Like, he's just such an absolute freak. Love him. Yeah, I don't know. I think he should be 50 times as owned as you're projecting. All right, so you got your 2 for 2. Achane was number 1. Eckler was number 2. Who was a very close 3?
Well, it was actually Chris Ostro who got HN. I was gonna say Mostert there. All right, let me see if I can figure out number 3. And
I did write up Mostert.
Feel free to guess as
it's
well.
Just like it's kind of like a similar argument where it's he's underrated relative to his ceiling. Like, he's had season highs of 45, 37, 29 DraftKings fantasy points. He's actually seen better volume with Devon Achane. So yeah, for 2% projected ownership or whatever, he's another good play. You could I think you could play them both together. Some people at my site disagree, but I
I
think
mean, they put up 99 fantasy points in a game earlier.
right,
Earlier this year.
exactly, exactly.
Just insane. All right, let me see if I can figure out this third one. I'm tempted because I feel like you're a Kenneth Walker guy, so I'm tempted, but that's not my answer yet. I might go there.
Well, I'll give you something we got from one of our sources. Apparently, I don't know that I believe this, just because like Pete Carroll's such a liar, but from someone who would know within the Seahawks organization, a Zach Charbonnet game is coming very, very soon.
Is Zach Charbonnet your guy?
No. Oh, okay. I'm just saying he was your guy last week.
Yeah.
I'm not on any Seattle running backs, but just thought you'd appreciate that.
I do. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna go with. This is really tough.
He's a guy I'm really confused why he isn't cash.
Why he isn't cash?
Like why he isn't a cash play.
All right, so I'm guessing he's going to be pretty inexpensive. Now I'm between Jerome Ford and Darrell Henderson for this one. I'm going to go with or Jalen Warren. Actually, these like sort of cheaper guys who should be getting some volume. I'm going to go with Jerome Ford.
So no, I mean, the volume could be there, but like 0 touchdown upside because 1, he doesn't get the red zone role, and like 2, like I think DTR just gets destroyed. I did write up Najee and Warren, giving a slight lean to Najee just because he has the near end zone role. And I did write up Darrell Henderson, who I forget how I had it, but like in hindsight, I think I should have Henderson above just because like he does have that the red zone role on lock, and like we have seen the Rams really lean super running back focused inside the red zone. He is the RB1. It's like still a 60-40 committee outside of that. But and we were talking about how Seattle was a bit of a run funnel of late. So Henderson I wrote up, but it wasn't that. It was Rachaad White. Like I just don't get it. What's your ownership?
I should have thought of that because you've always loved Rachaad White. I feel like he's one of your like every week kind of guys. I should have known it was going to be Rachaad White. We have Rachaad White for 6% ownership.
Yeah, so like I'm confused. Like I looked early in the week and I'm like, oh, everyone's going to play Rachaad White in cash, and like it just didn't. No one's even on him for tournaments. He's finished as a top 12 fantasy running back in 4 straight games. He's hit at least 98 yards from scrimmage, 46 receiving yards in each of these games, 78% snap share, like insane bell cow usage, top 5 in XFP per game, top 5 in fantasy points per game over his last 4. He has 228 receiving yards over that span. That's more than like Devontae Adams and a bunch of wide receivers people are excited to play. Just the RB15 by salary. San Francisco has obviously like amazing defensive line, but that's like not really a huge factor in the Rachaad White thesis. It's what he can bring pass catching. I mean, like I don't love him, but I mean, he's just done it however many weeks in a row, and I'm surprised he's at 6%.
You kind of trust the floor because of the pass catching, just like the volume in pass catching, essentially.
I mean, he could score a rushing touchdown and then get 6 catches for 60 yards and also a score. I don't know.
Yep. I don't think that I have any super off the wall plays like I did last week with Charbonnet and Dowdle and Algier.
I was hoping for one. Damn.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any really great. Just going team by team here. Like, I don't know. I'm going back to No, don't think I want to go to the Chicago guys. I mean, the Miami guys are, I guess, kind of in that bucket. Like they're getting, at least right now, they're projecting for low enough ownership that I guess you could kind of consider them, but they're not like the super cheap contrarian guys. I saw somebody bring up Josh Kelly earlier, and he was named as somebody who's similar to my Rico Dowdle call from last week, and I can kind of see it. But part of the Dowdle call was the 18-point spread or whatever it was last week. I thought he might get the entire second half. I'm not sure that that's in the cards for.
You've been good on the Galaxy Brain call. You need some credit because you did hit Dowdle. You also hit Gus Edwards a few weeks, and there was one other guy,
Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
But that was more the tools than myself, if I'm being honest. And you've hit the Rashid Shaheed, so that one I can't really take credit for that one. You hit it 1 week, and then 1 week it was just the stochastic tools loved him too. Yeah, I don't think I have any great galaxy brain plays here. If anybody was hoping for a running back, I don't think I got it for you. Do you have any other running backs you want to talk about, Scott?
No, I think we did it.
All right.
Oh yeah, there's a super special secret running back play who our guy John Proctor, who is the best, sharpest DFS player, at least I know. He says there's a super special secret running back play. He refuses to tell me until I'm done with all of my content. So
wow.
Check it out on Discord tonight or on our show tomorrow morning. I'm excited to hear it. He's batting 1,000 on calls like this. So I have no idea who it is, but
Todd Burrows wants us to talk about Derrick Henry.
Oh, that's who our Discord thinks it's going to be, is Derrick Henry. I don't know about that.
Oh, funny. I mean, we have Derrick. He is only 6,300. We've got him at 4.5% ownership, 4.9% chance of being optimal. Do you have any interest in Derrick Henry?
No, most game script dependent player in fantasy, they're 6-point underdogs. And then you look at the matchup. If you want to go to back to schedule adjusted.
Yep. Pull that.
It's the second worst possible
for the season. Okay.
Click on Rush for RB and click it again. Yeah, and then whoops. Yeah. Second worst possible matchup. So I just don't see that playing out. But
it is interesting. So does this make you have more interest in Tyjae Spears? The fact that they're giving up a lot of receiving.
Ooh, that should be your Galbrain running back.
So somebody already brought him up in chat earlier, so I was just noticing that. Yeah.
So you see that, right? You see how they're second best on the ground, but running backs are gashing them through the air. My whole thing with Tyjae Spears is like, everyone's like, oh, he outsnapped Derrick Henry and he outsnapped Derrick. Yeah, but like those are empty calorie snaps. Those are pass blocking snaps. If you look at like the touch totals, still not great, but I mean, he did have 5, 6, 4 targets the last 3 weeks, 5, 3 carries. I don't know. That's not enough for me, but I get it.
All right, Todd is in on Spears. Yeah,
there is a Galbrain cheap running back who's escaping me, who I did think long and hard about.
He's escaping. Do you want to go team by team here? Is it
no? It'll probably come back to me when we're building lineups.
Okay, sounds good. Then you want to move on? Talk about some wide receivers.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to talk some wide receivers. And before we do that, I have not done my one read of the show. Make it quick. If you live in one of these 6 states, Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, if you live in one of those 6 states, we've got a great deal for you. If you don't, sorry, not available. But in those 6 states, at Bet365, you bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets. It feels like free money to me. Again, that's just Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado. Of course, it's bonus bets. It's not actually free money, but $5 into $150. You play through it, then it's going to be real money. Check it out if you haven't already done so. Of course, you need to be 21 plus to play in most states. If you are someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Great deal for those people in those states, but pretty limited who can actually take advantage of it. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers now, and we'll start with the chalky wide receivers. Tank Dell being the chalkiest, 22% projected ownership at Stochastic for Tank Dell. Tyreek Hill, number 2 at 16.5% ownership. Everybody else below 15%. So let's just start with those two. How are you feeling about Tank Dell, Tyreek Hill this week? Do you think you're going to be matching the field, below the field, above the field? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Tank Dell is an amazing play. I think he's a great play. He's ranked top 2 among all receivers in XFP the last 2 weeks. He led the league in XFP last week, 40% first read target share over that span, 12.5 targets per game. It's a top 3 matchup against Arizona. It's a perfect schematic matchup. I talked about that before. Cardinals play cover 4, more than 2x the league average rate. And Tank Dell ranks top 7 among 135 qualifying receivers in fantasy points per route run against cover 4. Nico Collins ranks bottom 10. So great schematic matchup for Tank Dell to smash. That being said, where do you have Nico Collins?
So I just want to bring up this point because we didn't do usually at the beginning of the show, Scott, you do the reminder that this is a contrarian play, but we need to poke holes in the chalk. So we talk about the chalk at the beginning just for the context of the slate. But yes, Tank Dell is very much inside the box. No disagreement from us. We like to start each position by taking a look at the chalk, kind of either poking holes or saying, I'm willing to do it. So Nico Collins, I'm sad to hear you say that this is a great spot for Tank Dell, because Nico Collins was the guy, to me, is one of my favorite contrarian plays on the slate.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Right. You're right.
Okay. Love to hear that. We have him at 3.6% projected ownership for Nico Collins.
So everything says Tank Dell week. And yeah, Tank Dell is the best wide receiver play of the slate on paper. Can't argue with that. But he shouldn't be, 20 times as highly owned as Nico Collins, right? And there's something, I'm like the digging deep into matchups and advanced analytics. Like I'm that guy, but like narratives are important here. And I'm seeing a narrative that the field's missing. It's like the second highest owned Houston wide receiver is always the one who smashes, right? So like, why not Nico Collins this week? We know he has a massive ceiling. I think he's one of only 9 wide receivers with multiple games with 30 or more DK fantasy points. He hit 80 receiving yards in 4 of 6 healthy games, whatever it is. So I think he ranks top 7 among all wide receivers in yards per route run. So I think he's a great GPP play. Like it doesn't have to be that complicated. Chalkiest wide receiver, and then there's the other wide receiver who's been productive, who's at 4%. Yeah, that's a no-brainer leverage play right there.
Yep, 100% with you for that exact reason. And looking at their rates, I was just pulling it up on fantasy points. They're pretty similar across the board. Target share, area share, route participation, very similar between the two. Nico Collins, I think most of us, before he got hurt, before Tank Dell's gone off the past couple of games, at least I considered Nico Collins to be the wide receiver one. That I think Tank Dell maybe has surpassed him at this point, but I think we've also seen it go back and forth several times. So at this point, if the entire field is going to be on Tank Dell, as you said, you can just make it simple. If the whole field is playing Tank Dell, and honestly, the whole field is playing all parts of Houston outside of Nico Collins. I mean, Dalton Schultz getting significant ownership, Devin Singletary obviously getting significant ownership. So just from like a leverage standpoint against his teammates, lot of reasons to like Nico Collins this week. All right, what about Tyreek? Did you go over that yet?
Yeah, so Tyreek's a great play, obviously, like leads all wide receivers on the slate in fantasy points per game by a significant margin. Obviously has the best in week like upside of any like who has the best odds of breaking the slate any given week. It's Tyreek. It's not a great matchup. It's also a zone heavy matchup with which benefits Waddle more. But it's like Tyreek, he's the man. He's awesome. Like matchups don't really matter to him. So like, it's hard to argue against that. My only question is why is he so much more highly owned than CeeDee Lamb, who averages 40 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his last 3 or 4 games? Why is he so much more highly owned than Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's hit the 100-yard bonus in 6 of 6 healthy games? Why is he so much more highly owned than Keenan Allen, who has like a 50% first read target share and has shown a insane ceiling this season? And so that's my question. That would be my only question, is why is he so much more than these other? Because to me, it's very close. And I just want to say here too, like I'm running like insanely hot this year. Like there's going to be a week where I'm just like, it's really bad and I feel bad and I'm embarrassed. That's going to come eventually. I never feel good, trying to poke holes in a Tyreek Hill. But to me, I mean, what has CeeDee Lamb done over his last 4 games? Like it's insane. Like I don't know why it shouldn't be that CeeDee Lamb has that sort of ownership or some of these other.
Yeah, I think it's less about not liking Tyreek Hill as it is liking all the other receivers in that range. It sounds like for you. Is that right?
No, I like him. Yeah, it's just why is he so far and above those other high priced wide receivers? I think it's at least like insanely close.
Yeah, that's fair, I think. And they're not that far different in ownership, but yeah, certainly it's we have a lot of pretty nice looking wide receivers toward the top today. Brad Moore, I think that Noah Brown is out. If he's not already been ruled out, it's looking like he's not going to play. So unfortunately, even though Noah Brown has been crushing, I don't think we're going to be able to go there this week.
We'll just have to find a new Noah Brown.
Exactly. We're gonna keep looking for a new Noah Brown. Does it need to be somebody cheap? Is that for the new Noah Brown? Or is it just somebody low owned?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I probably need somebody cheap. All right. All right. So I'm guessing you're not going to like this 13% going to Rondale Moore.
No. Can you pull up that Muhammad Ba comment again?
Yes. Muhammad.
Yeah. So I just pulled it up in the fantasy points data suite. The Raiders have given up just 7 deep catches this season. That ranks 3rd fewest. They've given up just 322 deep yards. That ranks probably 4th fewest on a per game basis. So I'm not seeing that. That was true last year for sure, but I'm not seeing that this year. Rondale Moore. Yeah, I could be wrong because like he did see 8 targets last week and he did actually see 60 air yards, like major jump up from like he was almost basically negative before that, getting like running back usage. I'm just like a massive, like, why do we keep trying to make Wan'Dale Robinson chalk? Like it's the same exact thing. The guy has no upside. I don't think he's real. I think Greg Dortch outplayed him last year. I think he was just a function of this broken Cliff Kingsbury slot centric offense that no longer exists and is now a Trey McBride tight end centric offense. I hate him, but like I definitely could be wrong. That could be Kyler's boy. Hollywood is in a terrible schematic matchup. It's a great schematic matchup for Rondale. I have no interest and I hate him, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, at this owner, I mean, the tools hate him. 13% ownership, 6% chance to be an optimal. I shouldn't say they hate him. 6%, that's not horrible, but Rondale Moore, we've talked about, he is one of my highest exposed players in best ball. I'm cheering for him, but what about if Michael Wilson is out? Then would you start to have more interest in? Because I know last I've seen Michael Wilson is questionable to play.
Yeah, that was another late ad. I really like Michael Wilson. I liked him more than Hollywood because he had the schematic matchup, and I just think there's more upside. I also think he's kind of good. Like we went to the Senior Bowl and he looked uncoverable. He looked like the best wide receiver there by a wide margin. Well, Tank Dell looked awesome too, but yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm just kind of hoping he's fine.
Okay,
which isn't
if he is
good strategy.
If he is fine, you're going to play him. You like him better than Hollywood if he does play.
Yeah.
All right, we've got him at 12% ownership. Okay.
It's just like a brutal schematic matchup for Hollywood and a great one for him. And that's really mattered this year.
Nice. All right. So Michael, I can get behind some Michael Wilson love against the Texans. How would you like me to sort this? Do you want me to sort by team? Do you have particular players that you have?
Let's just stay at the top for just a little bit longer. Ridley versus Kirk. Kirk has seriously outplayed Ridley, but he has no ceiling. Ridley actually has more games with 20 plus or more games over 20 DraftKings fantasy points this year. He has 2. Kirk has 1. It's a horrible on paper matchup for Kirk. It's a great on paper matchup for Ridley. It's also a perfect schematic matchup for Ridley. But I kind of just want to fade the both of them because they've sucked ass this year. Ridley's done nothing without Zay Jones. But it does on paper look like a Ridley week more than it does a Kirk week. So there's that. And then, we can dive into some of my favorite plays of the week.
All right. Robert Woods. I mean, since we talk about every other receiver on Houston, any interest in Robert Woods?
Personally, I just think he's super dusty.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be playing him. Certainly not at 12%. But right, it could happen. CJ Stroud is just a kingmaker, right? So
yeah,
who knows?
All right, let's just get into some of your favorite wide receivers on the slate.
Definitely CeeDee Lamb is my favorite GPP wide receiver. Since the team's week 7 bye, he's averaging 14.3 targets, 167 yards, 2 end zone targets, 36.5 fantasy points per game. It's a really bad matchup on paper, but I don't know. Like, I don't know if you watched that clip where Dak Prescott almost went back into the game to get CeeDee Lamb his extra 8 yards so he could have 10 catches and 150 yards for 3 straight. I could really see them just totally going back to that. And remember, JC Horn is out, and their other starting cornerback is also out this week. Those are perimeter corners, but we did see CeeDee Lamb hit a season high in perimeter route share last week. Also, like Amon-Ra, he's just like, I said this last week. I don't know why we don't just view him as 97% Justin Jefferson at like 88% the salary, because that's just who he's been. Like, over his last 28 healthy games, 22.1 DraftKings fantasy points per game, 10.5 targets per game. That's just like 97% of what Justin Jefferson has given you over the same span. He's been at his best most recently, 100-yard bonus in 6 of 6 healthy games this year, 12.8 targets per game over his last 5. Not a great matchup on paper. I don't think that really matters, but it's an awesome schematic matchup. And then Keenan Allen, it looked like he disappeared after the Mike Williams injury, even though volume was like insane. But I think that was just like horrible schedule luck. I looked into it, and 4 of his previous 5 games came in bottom 10 matchups. I think 3 of those were bottom 5. This matchup, I don't really know what to make of it. It's either neutral or horrible. Yeah, it's just like hard to deny. Insane volume. That's clearly Herbert's guy. They really have no one else. And like, I know he's banged up, but like, he was banged up last week and that didn't seem to matter. Less expensive guys. DeAndre Hopkins. I talked about why I like Will Levis, especially given Jacksonville's poor pass rush. And I think that matters. Like, we saw him break the slate in Will Levis's debut, and in the 2 games since, like, non-productive, but the volume was there. Top 5 in targets, top 3 in air yards. Jacksonville is giving up the 2nd most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers. And now their CB1 Tyson Campbell's out. So everything's setting up nicely for DeAndre Hopkins. And then Curtis Samuel, I just think he's a strong value. Giants have sucked against slot wide receivers all year. And he's just decent value. He's been getting some near end zone looks. He's played well. We should talk about Cooper Kupp. Where did you have Cooper Kupp? You had him top 3, right?
We have Cooper Kupp getting 13% ownership.
Yeah, that's just it's really scary to try and like hate on Cooper Kupp, who's, you know, a god and what he's done the past 3 seasons. But I just like to remind everyone, he had never fallen short of like 90 receiving yards, and now he's averaging less than 33 over his last 3 games. And I just worry Stafford's going to come out there and not be able to grip a ball, but play the entire game anyway, spend most of his time against Devon Witherspoon. Garrett Wilson, I think, is a strong play. Really underrated what he's done of late. People just like see Zach Wilson's his quarterback and say, not playing this guy, but volume has really been incredible. Production hasn't been bad at all. He has an elbow injury, but he's going to play this week. Jalen Guy. Yeah.
I just want to jump in. Just want to get your feedback on this. So Demar Bowler, I want to give two this point, and then it kind of says a little bit of a narrative on Lamb as well. I talked about wanting to break Irvin's Cowboy record of 7-game streak of 100 yards or more, currently at 5 for Lamb. I also Ed Werder, you know, who we definitely trust right now, but he is, I think it's a direct quote, so we can trust the quote. CeeDee Lamb said, "With my explosion and Cooks coming along, we're about to get Tony Pollard going," is what CeeDee Lamb said, which I don't know if that really affects anything we want to do, but since we already liked Tony Pollard, I guess one more reason.
Can you repeat that one more time? I'm sorry.
He says,
you distracted me with Ed Werder, who scooped all my head-to-heads last week and destroyed me.
Did he really?
No. That'd be hilarious.
That would be because he played Hawkinson. I get it. He said, with my explosion and Brandon Cooks coming along, we're about to get TP going. About
nice. Okay. Nice little narrative. I like that.
Yeah.
I think Jalen Guyton's interesting. Like I don't know. Like I keep going back and forth on this, but it's like I don't know how good he is, but like the Josh Palmer role is good, which is to say, like, they hate Quentin Johnston and he's probably the clear number 2. He had a 15% target share last week. Gerald Everett's out. Keenan Allen's banged up. What if Keenan Allen were to suffer an injury? Like, how does he not get there? And then, like, even if not, like 3,300, I could definitely still see him getting there. So I think he's a legitimately good play with like legitimately good upside, even if you don't think he's very good at football, which is fine.
And that's one where the tools like him too. 9.7% projected ownership, 10.5% chance of being optimal. So a little bit of positive leverage on Jalen Guyton. And as you say, like, we don't really know Keenan Allen's entire health status. Maybe he gets even more of a bump there. What about Quentin Johnson? Any going back to QJ or going?
No, probably not. Probably just Guyton.
Okay.
We've just not seen anything from him to make us excited.
True. All right.
So now we go into Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I think that's just obvious. Everyone likes Purdy this week, but like both of them seem to be coming in fairly low. They have amazing matchups. It's a pass funnel spot, first of all. And then Tampa Bay's perimeter cornerbacks, Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean, both ranked bottom 20 in fantasy points allowed per route and coverage. Carlton Davis, who ranks bottom 5, is also questionable. He's pretty badly banged up. It's tough to pick between those two. I think Ayuk, is better, has more theoretical upside. It is a zone heavy matchup, which suits Deebo better, but just wanted to talk about those guys and how it's kind of weird that they're not following the Purdy ownership.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Neither of them getting that much ownership. We've got Purdy in double digits.
So now we get to go to the Galaxy Brain tier.
Ooh, who you got for me?
Christian Watson.
Okay, well I already brought him up earlier when we were talking about Jordan Love. I knew you were going to love Christian Watson.
I told in my article, I said, if he doesn't hit this week, I'm not going to write him up for the rest of the year. So I have to hold myself to that. So hopefully he hits, so I could just keep, I prefaced it with like, I promise I'm not trying to gaslight you here, but, and so what follows the but is, since week 5, he leads the league in end zone targets per game. He ranks 8th in deep targets per game. So that spike week upside is still there, and it's the best possible matchup. So if it doesn't happen this week, it's never going to happen. And it really should happen. Like, even if he's not good and Jordan Love's not good, like the matchup is good enough that it should still happen. So I'm going to sprinkle in Christian Watson. I'm going to play him. You don't have to tell me. Could just be a blind spot by me, but I'm going to play him.
I'm going to play him too. I think you've brainwashed me enough, Scott, that at this point I'm like, man, 4,600 Christian Watson. I'm with you. It looks like a spot where I'm going to attack it at 4,600 and sub 6% ownership. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense as somebody to be taking some shots on. All right, is that your only Galaxy Brain?
No, we got plenty more. Okay. JSN 4,300. This is just really simple. I know like JSN hasn't really showed us much, and no Seattle receiver has really showed us much, but Tyler Lockett seems seriously banged up, and the Rams, you want to go back to schedule adjusted. The Rams are a top slot funnel matchup. If you want to just click on slot, I want to make sure I didn't write this off in memory. Yeah. So
wait,
damn it. Did I screw this up?
Maybe we need to do last 5.
No, I don't know. This is on me, guys. I'm sorry.
You got it wrong. Misread.
Let's see. Oh no, it is right. Okay. So you can click on out wide. And then click it again. And what am I? Are you in last 5?
I am in last 5.
Go back to all.
Okay. Right, so we're going wide.
Maybe this is a thinner play than I made it out to be. All right, so you see the Rams are top 4, and they're just giving up -6 to out wide receivers. They're like a little worse than average to slot. You see that slightly positive green. They're way more of a tight end funnel matchup, as you'll see on the right. But I mean, like,
Yep.
Noah Fant runs 6 routes per game, so like,
Right.
if there was a player to go off, it makes sense to me that it would be JSN, who's also seriously cheap and is outscoring Metcalf and it isn't too far behind Lockett. But yeah, you have me sweating here. And
so
then
while we're here, I just want to ask, what is the package where you would get this, the schedule adjusted fantasy points per game? So if I go to plans, and I guess I'm assuming that off the top of your head.
Yeah, that's standard, but also premium. Either one will have that.
Okay. Just figured people might want to know that, since it is a kind of a cool resource that don't have elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you. And then after that, I guess just expensive guys. We keep saying, Neil, that Jalen Waddle is massively due. He's just massive.
He got there a couple weeks ago, though, didn't he?
Well, he did, but he's due for more than that. Like, he's due for a 40-point game and then 3 straight 25-point games.
Yes.
Like, that's how due this guy is. So he's been running bad with injuries, 42%, 80%, 54% route share due to injuries. Volume has been awesome. He ranks second among all wide receivers in XFP per route run since week 2. This is one of the best and most efficient players in the game. It's a zone heavy matchup, which helps him more than it helps Tyreek. And Tyreek is the number 2 chalkiest wide receiver play of the slate. So he's obvious leverage.
Yep.
And so that's our guy, Neil. So we got to give a shout out to our guy. And then where's Mike Evans coming in?
Mike Evans coming in at 5% ownership, 6% chance being optimal.
Yeah, I mean, he's just good. Like, he's just been getting slept on in terms of how good he's been. If you take out that one game he left early with an injury, he ranks top 10 in fantasy points per game, top 10 in a bunch of volume stats. He's not really viewed as a top 10 wide receiver this year. And the matchup's great. 49ers are giving up 25.1 DraftKings fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones over their last 5. Really, he's just someone to mix in for bringbacks or mini stacks, but he's fine. He's solid.
I see Sammy bringing up Dontavian Wicks, who I know has been running more routes recently. We're not projecting for really any ownership. What is it in the past? Let me actually look up the Packers for the past couple games, what that route participation looks like, because I heard elsewhere that he was getting, so he's still just at 43% route participation over the past 2 games. Do you have any interest in Dontavian Wicks?
No, I'm kind of just putting all my eggs in the Christian Watson basket.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see the case to be made there for Dontavian Wicks, but I typically am not playing on a main slate. I don't think I'm playing too many wide receivers with under 50% route participation, so I'm not sure I'm going to get there. Somebody else in chat brought up Brandon Cooks, who we've got a little bit of positive leverage here. He's up to 4,700. Has he shown enough to you over the past, I guess, just that last game? I think he has 2 good games now, maybe on the year, but in that most recent game, obviously Cooks was great. Over the past 2 games, he has 12 targets for 10 receptions, running routes 71% of the time. And
you know who's interesting to me? Right below him, Jalen Tolbert.
Okay.
Only 2 fewer targets. He had twice as many as Michael Gallup. Decent production. Mostly this is just he's 3,300, and our guy Brett Whitefield, who charts all the games for us, he leads the charting team that charts all the games for us. He told me in the preseason, he was like, Jalen Tolbert looks unreal. Like, that wasn't a player he was very high on coming out, but really impressive in the preseason. So I made a list of like all my favorite sub 4K wide receivers, because I was thinking about MMEing this week, or you and I talked about that, Neil, as MMEing this week.
Yep.
And so, I talked about Kyle Phillips, Khalil Shakir, Jamison Williams, Darnell Mooney, Josh Reynolds, and Jalen Tolbert. Not necessarily in that order, but just some various punts with upside. Also Trey Palmer and a few others. But if I had to pick my favorite from that, would be actually another Brett Whitefield call, which would be Josh Reynolds.
Okay.
3,700. This isn't my Noah Brown. This isn't something I have a lot of confidence in. But basically, he's just been better than you're going to give him credit for. If you take away his 3 worst games, he's averaging 64.2 yards per game. That's like the same as Chris Olave and Jalen Waddle. And he has only one fewer 50-yard or 66-plus yard game as Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Adam Thielen. Basically, it's just a pass funnel matchup. Highest over under the slate. And I think he's a much better value than he's getting credit for. You could also make a case for Jameson Williams, but I think those guys are good guys to sprinkle in. And again, like I do want to be betting overs in that game and playing a bunch of Fields and Goff. So that's probably my chief Galbrain wide receiver.
Okay. I don't know if there's anybody else that I need to bring up to you. We also have limited. I have live before lock in 35 minutes that I'll have to. So we probably got about 15 minutes left.
Oh boy.
Maybe we can go at 20 more minutes because we still need to look at tight ends and make some lineups. So I feel like
all right, we'll only do one lineup, I guess, this week.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what we have time for. But yeah, okay. I don't think there's anybody else that I needed to talk about. Do you have anybody else that you want to talk about at wide receiver?
No. Let's do tight end.
All right, we'll move on. Talk about some tight ends. Yeah, I got too comfortable because I was like, man, we have more time this week than we have had in recent weeks, and now we're going super long. We'll start. Chalkiest tight end, Trey McBride. I know that he is your guy. Let's just talk about him to start off with. What do you think about 25% ownership there?
Yeah, wouldn't more needs to be said about a guy who is averaging 71.3 air yards per game that would lead all tight ends the position, 31.5% target share that would lead all players at all positions over the full seat. Like, what more do you need to say about that? Well, here's what you can say. He has a best possible matchup. Houston's giving up the second most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to tight ends. And now Jimmy Ward is out. It's also an ideal schematic matchup. He's crushing too high coverage this year. He's just an insane, amazing, awesome play.
All right, so we're not poking holes in the Trey McBride play.
He should probably be. He should honestly be above 25%. That's how good.
And you said he should be 50% the other week, and I was like, no, I don't think I can get there with you. And then he crushed. So yeah, he just continues to get it done. Now he's got Kyler back. Yeah, a lot of good things to say. What about Ingram, Schultz, Kmet? How are you feeling about these?
Yeah, I think Ingram is one of those guys that, like, that projections are going to get wrong, and he's popping in all the projections, and like that's a mistake to be popping in the projections. I think for tournaments at least, because he just has 0 touchdown upside. Like, it's insane. He has 0 end zone targets this season. He only has 2 targets inside the red zone this year. He has -9 receiving yards inside the red zone this year. And so people, like, I guess the projections look at the targets and they look at the receiving yards and they're just like, oh, he's due. He just has like no touchdown upside to be this highly owned in tournaments every single week. And so every week I've been fading him, and every week it's worked out well for me. Like, don't get me wrong. He's still, a theoretical, he's still a technical value. He just shouldn't be this highly owned. Schultz, I think, is an amazing play. We mentioned him before. He has a perfect schematic matchup. Based on that, it should be Dell and Schultz. We just like Nico because everyone's forgetting about him. But like, his volume has been out of control. The connection with Stroud has been out of control. Kmet, I think, is fine. He was really more Tyson Bagent's guy, but he did smash in Fields' last 2 games. He does have some upside. Kincaid is fine. Laporta, Logan, whatever. I do like Pat Freiermuth and Tyler Conklin. I'm just like always attracted to these super cheap tight ends because it allows you to pay up elsewhere. It is a worst possible matchup for Freiermuth. If you exclude games against Mark Andrews, Cleveland is just giving up 3 fantasy points per game to tight ends. So it is like a brutal matchup. I think, to be honest, I like Conklin a little bit more. He's hit 6 targets, 66 receiving yards in back-to-back games, despite despite just a 59.6% route share. So not really full-time usage, and the production's there. Now Garrett Wilson's a little banged up. Jets beat writers are saying CJ Uzoma has been demoted. That's more, supposedly that has more to do with their other tight end. But I could see more coming Conklin's way. So I like both of those cheap tight ends. Parham is interesting.
No Gerald Everett this week.
Michael Mayer is interesting. And that's about it.
No Chig for you this week.
Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe. I guess for Levis stacks.
You were interested in both Ayuk and Debo. Any interest in a sub 2% owned George Kittle?
Yeah. So like, who are these people stacking Purdy with? He's in play. I just I don't know. Okay. Why not just play Trey McBride in every lineup, Neil?
Why not? Well, we'll see. We'll see. All right. Do you want to make some lineups, or do you want to talk about defense?
Let's do it
at all. Do you want to talk about defenses, or should we?
No.
Okay. We're just. Yeah, I think making lineups is more important because we.
All right. I gave you all the answers, Neil. Now you put it together and make us a $1 million lineup.
Okay. Oh wait, what am I doing?
That's the deal.
All right. You want me to make the lineup with the answers to the tests already given to me? All right. Draft team. Now I'm going to make Scott's favorite team ever right now. So I'm not going to go to my guy Tua. Maybe I go to Dak. I know that you love Dak. Is Fields the number one guy for you? I'm going to start with a Dak stack.
Dak stack, love it.
And we're going to go straight to CeeDee Lamb, who you loved. I'll think about whether we need a secondary Dallas guy. I don't think we're doing a bring back in this one. All right, running backs. You're in love with Achane, so I obviously have to play Achane. Brian Robinson. I'm just throwing together the ultimate Scott stack here. All right.
Oh, easy stack with Washington on B-Rob. Not necessarily for this lineup. I'm just that's like the chalk defense this week, and you raise your ceiling by fitting that stack.
True. Ride DST. We're going Commanders. So now we have 43.66 remaining. All right. Who are the cheap receivers that Scott loves? JSN. Could be JSN.
Watson.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, this is really easy actually.
This is such a Scott lineup. I love it.
And then 4,200 left over in the flex. I mean, of course, I'm intentionally just throwing in all of your favorite plays. It better be a Scott lineup. If it's not, then I'm getting things very, very wrong here.
We might have to go cheaper on defense. I don't know.
Well, we could go to Guyton and go more expensive in defense too.
Oh, okay.
Just thinking about who our options are here.
What about Guyton instead of JSN? Does that do anything?
JSN, yeah, that could work.
Or Freiermuth instead of McBride.
Well, now we have 5,200 left over. Jalen Warren. You did love Jalen Warren. You loved your Dalton Schultz as well. At this point, I get the feeling
you just missed Singletary chalk.
Oh, you're right. I mean,
did we talk about DJ Moore?
We did not talk about DJ Moore.
Oh, dude. So shout out to everyone who sticks around. I have DJ Moore as the second best wide receiver play of the slate. Like, he's easily cash for me. You just look at what he did with Justin Fields: 19, 13, 30, 52 DraftKings fantasy points over his last 4 full games. Tyson Bagent totally neglected him. But I think he smashes this week. I think he gets like 3 screens at an absolute minimum, 2 deep shots, 3 more targets beyond that. And I think he does really well this week. So shout out to everyone who sticks around. DJ Moore. I always forget one guy every week.
All right, we're gonna throw DJ Moore in there, and I'm still thinking about who I want to put in at defense, because now we can't do Washington with DJ Moore in there. I think, right? They were too expensive.
Yeah,
Commanders. Yeah, they're 36. We could do the Dolphins against AOC. They are getting better. Like, the defense is healthier now than they have.
Right.
Back. Let's do it. I think that's a very straightforward, very Scott lineup right there.
Love it.
It looks good. I think it looks like a good lineup. All right, there's one. There is one lineup. Do you want to do another lineup that you helped me with here? I think we have time for at least one more. All right. How do you want to start this lineup? Do you want to go to the like back to just Fields with DJ Moore right away, or do you see?
Yeah, let's do that.
Some other stack. All right.
Unless you wanted to do Goff, but just definitely that game.
Yeah, we can do a different. We'll do 3 lineups. All right, so we're going Fields, Moore, and then obviously this is, to me, if you're playing Fields, like the hardest part would be the Bears getting there. So if I'm playing Fields, I think I'm probably going to be game stacking it pretty heavily. At least at least 3 players in it. So at least one Detroit bring back. I wouldn't mind having a couple Detroit bring backs.
I'm with you.
And I know you love Amon-Ra, so we can go right to Amon-Ra. We could throw Laporta in there, or we could throw in, I know you liked Jahmyr Gibbs,
Monty.
Yeah. Let's see. We need to get some cheap pieces in here first. So first of all, the defense. Should we try the Commanders Brian Robinson thing again?
Let's try that again.
And then we could do and Singletary too. And this is a relatively
nice.
Right, and that brings down the price a bit.
Every time I build lineups, I always want to make a super cheap running back a few of those lineups just to let you fit everything else.
Yeah, this one, I think this is turning out well. We've got 46.66 remaining. So plenty of, we got to go, continue going kind of cheap, but it's not like we need to go crazy. We could fit in Christian Watson in this one again. We could fit in Guyton, JSN.
Let's do a cheap tight end. We could do Freiermuth or Conklin or Parham.
All right,
or Mayer.
Freiermuth is the cheapest, so let's just see what we can do with Freiermuth in there. Now, I mean, if we put somebody like Christian Watson or one of these cheap receivers in, then we're going to be able to fit somebody very solid into the flex. I know you kind of want to fade both of them at Calvin Ridley at 5,400. Sort of interesting. What do you think? Do you want to go stars and scrubs with our remaining 2 picks, or 2 kind of mid-range guys?
I don't think I'm in love with the mid-range.
Okay, so stars and scrubs.
Yeah.
Who would be your star and or scrub of choice? JSN? Do you want to go all the way down to Jalen Guyton, or up? I mean, even Watson, we could fit in this one pretty easily.
Yeah, let's see what Guyton gets us. Can it get us to CD? I'm bad at math without a calculator.
I don't remember what CD's price tag is. Let's see. Gets us to Cup. Does not get us all the way up to CD. We get Cup. We go down to Waddle.
Just miss out on Eckler. We could drop defense again.
Well, yeah, we can. Yeah, that's always.
I always do that. I just hate defense, so it's just like, give me.
I mean, the Jets have a great defense and Josh Allen. Yeah,
exactly, dude leads the league in turnovers and is the best defense.
CD.
Yo, wait, why aren't Jets defense chalk?
Because people are afraid of Josh Allen.
Oh my God, what a lineup, my dude!
What
this
a
is
lineup!
Great.
You just have to take the 2 uber cheap Guyton and Freiermuth, and then the lineup turns out beautifully.
What about Guyton to Jameson for more correlation?
Is Jameson cheap enough?
Yeah, he's 3,300, same price.
Oh wow. Yeah, let's try that.
I hope we didn't just swap off the nuts though.
We just swapped right off the nuts. We fucked that up bad, but still, I don't care. It only cost us $1 million. That's fine. All right, let's do one more. Let's do one more lineup, and then I got to get on to NBA Live before lock. All right. So, do you want to do a Goff stack or go to a completely different game?
Let's do a completely different game. You pick the quarterback.
All right, you're letting me pick.
If you want to be Tua, you could do Tua. We could do a Tua lineup.
Tua is my favorite quarterback on the slate. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do a Tua lineup, I think. All right, we'll do Tua. We're gonna go all the way up to Tyreek Hill. I'm gonna make you. This is gonna be Scott's exposure to Tyreek Hill. This one lineup, right? No, you don't hate Tyreek Hill.
No. This is something I need to say too, is like when I poke holes in the chalk, there are still so many lineups where, like I'm contrarian enough where like I still have exposure to the chalk. I still kind of jam in the pieces. So it's just you have more to gain if the chalk flops, so it's always worth making a contrarian argument against them. Like this, I do you think this is enough?
I kind of want to. So I want to play either Jalen Waddle or Josh Jacobs in this one. You choose which of those two.
Oh, I'm hardcore veto on Jacobs.
I know. I almost said that
Waddle.
I was gonna try to force you to play Jacobs, but I know we do give.
If you want to force me, you could force me. I can make a Jacobs lineup work somehow.
This looks fine to me. We can do Hill. What did you say? You have some interest in Michael Mayer or no?
Yeah.
Can we try that?
He's cheap enough. Yeah, throw him in. Let's do it.
All right, we're gonna throw.
To me, it's just Miami can get there without being pushed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely true.
I mean, if you want to go full onslaught, if you want to throw A-Chain in here, like I'm very down with that.
All right, let's see if we have the money.
Okay.
Do you want to go back to Guyton or something? That would obviously open up some money if we go back to a Guyton or something. If you didn't notice, I threw the Jets defense in this one again.
Nice, yeah, smart.
Is he still running significant routes? Let's see. This will give us week 9.
I don't even know. I think so. I think he just doesn't. They forget he exists when he's out there.
Down to 53. He was 100% early in the year. So
yeah. Well, it could it could be that he's I don't know. All right. Singletary.
Yeah, I think that makes. I mean, we both love Singletary. We could go back to B-Rob once again, or do you want to try H-Chan in this one?
I kind of do. How many times have full on Miami onslaughts worked out?
They've worked out. They've worked out a bit. Yeah. What is the price? Oh, there we go. 66 on.
It's
H-Chan.
not bad.
Now we still have. If we threw Guyton in there, what do we have left then? 4,900. We could throw Guyton and Christian Watson in this one if we wanted to. We could go JSN and somebody just under 4,000. I can't think of who would be there. What do you think? You want to go all the way down to Guyton again or something different?
Michael Wilson. Mix it up.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Let's mix it up. That makes sense. We still have enough for Christian Watson.
Oh, beautiful.
Is that where you want to go? Over Brandon Cooks would be another option there. Jake Ferguson. Is Christian Watson just your guy? Are we gonna keep making this mistake?
I think so. I don't know.
I'm into that mistake.
We could try and play around. We could take out Singletary, put in Dell somewhere, and then pick a different running back. I don't know. No, I think
they're better defense.
I think that looks good.
Yeah, I think this looks like a pretty solid lineup. I don't see any obvious defensive upgrades or anything. Yeah, I like it. We got the double stack with the Mayer bring back. There you go. 3 lineups done.
I can't believe all 3 of those lineups are winning the Millionaire that maker.
I know it's going to be when we split those 3 lineups winning the Millie Maker.
3-way tie.
Just because people don't know that there is actually a 400-point cap on the Millie Maker. After 400, they stop counting. We're expecting all 3 of these lineups to hit that 400-point cap on DraftKings.
That's right.
All right, Scott. That is going to do it. I need to get going to the NBA Live Before Lock show. Any final words?
Nope. This was fun. Thanks for having me.
No final words for Scott. Check out if you want to check out the fantasy points data, it is in the description of this video. If you want to check out the stochastic data, that's in the description of this video as well. We both have nice deals going on. We've got the Millie Maker deal going on at Stochastic. Subscribe to whatever YouTube channel you are watching right now. Subscribe to both of our channels, Stochastic and Fantasy Points, both putting out a lot of great content all week, every week. So give us a subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck this weekend.